What's happening, everybody? trueeevil here, and today we got to talk about this balance update for the launch of Etheria Restart, because I am not joking when this absolutely changes all of my plans for launch, because some characters are nerfed to the ground, and some characters that I didn't believe needed to be buffed got a buff, which, like, I already thought some of these characters that got buffed were tier 0, so now it's just like, I don't even know. New triple S tier for me. But without further ado, let's just get in on it. And the first thing I want to address is just this. Every single unit now, when they ascend to 5 and 6 stars, they're going to get additional 5 points of speed, which is way different than before because previously it was just HP, attack, and defense. And that's why you would see these 4-star Marvells, 4-star Krakens, 4-star Kazios being used to clear content. But now, since speed is tied to those, I'm going to assume there's going to be a lot more 5-star units. If you're going to focus on a unit for AI Arena, you're probably going to 6-star everything in there, just so, when it's like a Lily versus a Lily, you want whoever Lily goes first is probably going to do better. So in those kind of situations, it's going to be super important. But in RTA, I still think 5-starring all those units is the way to go, just because you're going to have limited resources in the beginning of the game, so you definitely don't want to be giving all these speedster units those 6 stars, because you want to invest in your DPS and bruiser units first. So yeah, that's just like a general update, but let's just start off with this Chloros thing, because I can't believe he got a damage increase. Like, it's not even a small damage increase. Like, maybe a 400 to a 440%, but it's a 480%. That's freaking, you know, that's a 20% damage increase. And if you know anything about Chloros, this isn't just a 20% damage increase, because every time he uses his ultimate, it increases by a 25% chance, or 25% total, up to 100%. So every time he does it, it does more. So he already did pretty much a quarter of every single boss's health to begin with. That wasn't a Union or Phantom Theater boss. But now, he's going to do a third to a full half or something. It's going to be absolutely atrocious. So I really didn't want to build Chloros for the launch. I built him for the final test, but seeing this, I may use those 3 lattices to give him that super boost and really make sure that I do well in Phantom Theater and Union Boss, or at the very least have a friend that has a Chloros that has those points, or I could borrow someone from the Union. I think this is going to make the best single target damage dealer, who was already the best at doing this for a lot of content, and now he's just like going to just be even more the best, right? Because Victor and Ditting might be better if you're just trying to wombo combo turn 1, but in any situation that is like 3 turns, for instance, Chloros is just going to out damage. So yeah, huge change there. And another huge change is Veronica, because what happened with her is she wasn't used a lot in the final test, because her chance to spread the buff that she steals to allies got changed to from 100% to 50%, right? But now it's back to 100%, which makes her broken again. So definitely going to be seeing a lot of Veronicas. It does make sense, right? You did this nerf, no one used her because of the nerf, and now they're just going to make her amazing again. I do think this was a weird way to nerf her, because, like, yeah, I don't know. I think she's just going to be, like, go from, like, B tier or C tier or whatever you feel like she was now, and, now she's going to be definitely meta unit, if not meta defining. But we'll see that more on the first couple of weeks of RTA. Moving on, I don't think this Mia buff is that much. When I use Mia for that skill 3, I was not using it for the heal. I was doing it for all the other things. And I don't even remember what her skill 2 did. I think it's a D-spell, to be honest. But even then, I was using her for these really funny shenanigan teams where I would just be using, like, Lilith and Kraken, and then you have these units that, like, reduce stats. Like with this, I used Suki and Mia to basically do an infinite CC on my opponent, as well as extending the buff from the attack up and speed up from Suki. And, it just all lined up to be super awesome. But, I still think Mia is going to be a niche unit. I don't think this buff is enough to make her, like, a great unit per se. So, it's nice she got buffed, but, like, could have been a little more. Moving on, Zata. I think Zata is great, and this 10% isn't going to really change anything on that. She's definitely worth building if you like her, but personally she does need that charge up time, so she's not going to be like that wombo combo cleave unit. She's better for like PvE instances that are like Infinity Train, for example, where she can stack up all those buffs and start dealing crazy amounts of damage. She's not necessarily good for like clearing things in like the first 2 turns. So you got to remember that. So basically, I don't think this is going to change anything with Zata. But with Tiamat, the bloodbath stack thing, definitely not like a big notice. But what is going to be a big notice is this heal right here. Previously, you're trying to beat down the Tia, and then she ults, and she gains that 30% of maximum HP, which basically makes her go from almost being in knockout range to being back at basically full health again. So now it's only at 10%. So if you can live those initial hits from Tia when she ults, it's way easier to burst her down. So in my opinion, this is like an actual huge nerf to Tia for PvP, and it is going to change my I still want her on my account. I still think she's great. I just don't think she's going to be nearly as much of a problem to get rid of as she was before. But I still think she is the best bruiser in blue. Moving on is the first buff that I just don't understand at all, because I thought Rahu was the best green unit in the game. So why not make the best green unit in the game even stronger? And, basically what I'm reading here is the crazy thing with the stacks getting that additional percent. That's kind of whatever, but the actual thing is like how much stronger his basic attack is. So what this means for me personally is with Rahu is I'm going to try a Bramble build for sure, because his brambleness just got even harder. He is going to whack people with that stick, and it's going to be whacked good. And now Lingluo, I do think this buff is really good, but like, she was already one of the best characters in the game. So just make her a little bit better. This isn't going to change the amount of times I'm going to use her, because I'm still going to use her the same amount of times, right? It's just like, this is just going to feel a lot better. Now, a lot of people were worried about Rosa getting nerfed, and they were talking about that skill 3 getting nerfed, that skill 2 getting a little bit nerfed, and what they actually nerfed was her turn meter pushback with her skill 1, which got changed from 10% to 8%. Like, I wouldn't have changed anything. Like, this is so minuscule. This is like, it's a little more insulting, you know what I'm saying? So like, I don't think this changes anything. If you were feeling Rosa on the selector, you're still going to feel Rosa on the selector still. Now, Bourne, my boy Bourne, got that damage increase, and it's a lot of damage increase. I'm not going to be joking when I said this is really high for him, because this 60% increase is going to go with the Star Caller. Now, the problem with Bourne is still the problem with Bourne, right? He can't crit, which means doing team comps with Bourne is a pain, because a lot of the best units like Dina, Heinrich, I could just keep naming, like Gray, Rosa, they all want their units to crit. They give crit rate, they do extra damage if you crit, and it's just like really hard to plug Bourne into that. So like, getting this damage up is definitely needed to like make him relevant, but he's still really hard to make team comps with. The extra damage is good, but like, it's really hard to justify building him, in my opinion, because he's sort of a one-trick pony. He does the skill 3 burr, and then he waits for his another skill 3. So, you know, great he does more damage, but I don't think it's going to be enough to make him like a meta unit. Moving on, Lilith, just a little bit more damage, whatever. But what really changed is this Chloros. Now, Chloros was used by a lot of people with Marll and Chloros because both of them together made one of the scariest combos in the world. And that is because Marll gave speed down, and Chloros is her unique, the hacking, also lowered speed, right? So not only are you giving them speed down, but then you're giving them the hacking, which just makes them a absolute turtle. But now they sort of took off that unique aspect of Chloros and they added speed down with her skill 3, which means, no more shenanigans with Chloros and Rosa, no more shenanigans with Marll and Chloros. It's just like, they didn't want to make Chloros absolutely broken. And, it is understandable, but it is going to make it so, like, she's not going to pair well with certain units anymore. Like, you're going to use her for the speed down and defense down, and, the hacking is going to be good, but this definitely affects her use in teams that have, like, 2 supports. Now, in 4-person comps, it's still going to pretty much be the same, but, it is a bummer that she got nerfed because, I don't really think she needed it that much, even though she is the best debuffer in the game. Now, Freya, her skill 1 passive got changed to a 70% chance from what it was previously. I don't think that's really going to change much with Freya. It is a little bit annoying, but, it is what it is. And now this turn dot change, I could care less. Chiaki change, I couldn't care less. Dina change, this is when I start caring. Now, for me personally, I'm only really using her for this erosion. So getting the erosion changed sort of freaked me out when I saw this nerf, but luckily it didn't change the real reason you use Dina, which is that extra true damage to her attack. It only affects this turn meter, which is also pretty minuscule of a change. And the skill 1, personally, I'm only using Dina to win in the first 2 turns, so I'm not really worried about the turn meter steal. So she's still going to function the same way as I was previously using her. It's not a big deal. Now, another character that got nerfed is Kraken, and, as we learned from the effect accuracy, that the one thing that matters on effect accuracy is it over 50%? Because if it's over 50%, that means we can get the maximum amount of value from getting the double up, which is it'll have a 90% rate. And Kraken, even though his percent chances got lowered to 75% to 65%, and a 60% to a 50% chance to apply freeze, with enough effect accuracy, that's not going to change anything. So this actually, all of these nerfs on Kraken don't really change like how many times he's going to proc. It's going to affect how much effect resistance. And if you're fighting someone with a bazillion effect resistance, basically the worse this can be, it went from 30 to 25%, which I don't think is that big of a deal. I think Kraken is going to be completely fine. The one thing that they didn't do the color change, which they did for almost everything else, was this pushback on the turn meter. They changed that from 35 to 30%. I wish they did the color, but they're just trying to give us this patch notes as quick as possible. So I'd rather have them bring them out on Sunday night than wait till Tuesday with a little bit of color coding change. Doesn't change much for me. Now, what does change a lot for me is the unit that was my best unit on the final test, and that was Sonia. Sonia single-handedly won me almost all my PvP matches at the end because not only is she bulky, but she was able to use her passive if she was frozen. Now, apparently that was an issue. I didn't think it was an issue because it's sort of like end of turn effects in like Magic the Gathering or something like that, where, what do you do if there's three things that happen at the end step? Well, you put them in a sequence, right? So the first part of that sequence was she gets unfrozen and then she uses her passive. It's still at the end of the turn. So I didn't actually think this was like a change that needed to be done. But what this does do, right, is going to change her from being the best PvP healer to probably the third best PvP healer. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This actually sucks. And her heal getting a little bit nerfed, I personally don't think it's that big of a deal. But this issue that I don't think is an issue getting nerfed, oh, I'm absolutely mad about this, and I'm probably not going to build my Sonia anymore. Now, that probably is going to change, and she's definitely going to be used still. It's just like, she's definitely not going to be as good as she used to be, which is a super bummer. Now, let's get to the character that everyone knew was going to get nerfed somehow, and that's Marll. And Marll got nerfed exactly how I thought he would on his skill 1, which, when you had it maxed out to 50%, you could boost it all the way up to 90%, right, with effect accuracy. And now they changed it to 40%, which means maxed out with effect accuracy it's 80%, which, it's not basically a guaranteed chance all the time. So, every 10 times you do it, it's going to land 8 times versus 9 times. And, I don't think it's that big of a change. But what is a big change is it went from stealing 25% to 15%, which basically means you're not going to be able to take infinite turns with Marll anymore, which, that can be actually scary, right? Because a lot of people cheesed all the content in the final test with this character, and now you can't really do it. But you still can use him in PvP at the beginning, because the turn meter pushback only got changed from 50% to 40%, which isn't going to really affect what you really needed him for in PvP, which is that initial push. But what did change is the skill cooldown, which, this is actually kind of insane to me that they did this, but, it is what it is. And is this going to change if I build Marll? Probably. I would just rather have like Chloros and Kraken at this point instead of using Marll. So because of that, I think the only real reason you build him still is for the res down. He's the only character that can get res down. But the problem is, now that Chloros gives speed down instead of her unique, I don't think you need 2 characters that give speed down. So if I need a character with speed down and doing some turn meter action, I'm going to go with Chloros now. I think Marll has been downgraded, and that's good, right? The SR unit version of Chloros should not be better than the SSR version. So this is just going to make Chloros stonks go up. And let's talk about another character that got nerfed to the ground, which is Victor. And, previously I was going to say I'm building Victor as my single target DPS SR, and because of this is like actually huge, right? Because this isn't changing a 6% damage dealt increase, it's changing a 24% damage dealt increase from when he uses that initial skill 3. So what happens is, he's doing significantly less damage, so Ditting is definitely going to be winning that race. It's really rough out there for those Victor fans. I feel sorry for them because I'm definitely one of them. So, we're going cat ear guy now. Ditting all the way, boys. Ditting stonks are up. And, Dorothy, I don't really care. But who I do care that got nerfed is number 41. Because I was actually planning on building number 41 because that 35% turn meter increase was absolutely broken. I single-handedly won a lot of RTA matches with it. She was definitely the best rare unit. She was better than most of the like SR units. This is huge. Like, this made her go from like a giga awesome unit to it's kind of mediocre now. And because of it, I'm probably not going to build her anymore, which is unfortunate. She has now been outclassed by Blue Andrew and Ashu, and she is sadly going to be in the never used ever again category. RIP, because she was definitely one of the best characters in the game. Now, the most important things on the shells, I think White Fang is still amazing. It did a little bit too much damage. And the Artisan, I don't think this changes much with Artisan. I don't think these are nearly like going to affect anything, in my personal opinion, because I just personally thought White Fang did way too much damage in PvP, and that's going to change it for sure. What is going to be changed, though, is the codex of magic, where skills cannot have their cooldown reduced. So what I assume what it's saying with this is the combo with Lily that people were doing, where like you could go Messiah, codex activates, use Messiah's skill 3 again, and then like use Lily to reset the codex of magic and the skill 3, so you can just go quad Messiah cleave. You're not going to be able to do that anymore, it looks like. I assume that's what it says, and vice versa. You can't do the Amber combo as stupidly as it was previously. So that's whatever. And the last thing I'm going to say is Twilight Knight, because Twilight Knight is arguably the best epic shell, and the damage on that has been lowered drastically from 200% to 160%. Now, previously, it did, I didn't really see a difference between Twilight Knight and a Mythic Shell, and there's no Mythic Shell that does what Twilight Knight does. So this was basically a yellow shell that was a red shell, in my opinion. It did absolute crazy amounts of damage, and the thing with it is what was really broken about it is the defense reduction, which when you paired it with someone like Victor in PvP, Twilight Knight procs, and whoever got hit by that is getting one-shotted by Victor, and it's not going to matter. And I don't think any of the other patch notes matter. So the main things, Rahu is now a must build. Tia got nerfed, so Tia is now the second best, possibly third best bruiser now. I do think Rahu and Hellkid stonks just went up because of that. Veronica is back on the metagame menu to being one of the best units. Victor is sadly not going to be the powerhouse he was, so you're going to be building Ditting, and I'm a little sad about that because, it's not a cat girl, and I would rather build a cat girl than a cat boy, so super sad about that. The shell things aren't that big of a deal, and Sonia got nerfed to the ground as well as number 41. So basically, we did lose 3 units that I thought were must builds on every account, and that's really going to change a lot of things up for me because three of the 8 units I wanted got nerfed to the ground. That's crazy. But the good news is, though, is Rosa didn't. So Rosa stonks are still up for the selector, and I'm pretty much now, I'm going to be honest, I was planning on Rosa, but with Rahu stonks up, Rahu might be my selector unit. Just kidding. It's either going to be Rahu or Sukiyo, though. Or Hellkid. It's either going to be one of those 3. Or Rosa. Actually, it's going to be one of those 4. It's just going to depend on what I pull on my account. And, it's definitely not going to be Tiamat anymore. I'll tell you that much right there. So, yeah, a little sad on the SR nerfs. They got nerfed to the ground. Number 41, sadly, nerfed. It's just going to be sad days here. I'm going to be playing the smallest violin in the world for the rest of this night.